It's rare that I find somebody that knows all of these things. I'm gonna do something today I never do on this channel. A lot of people are gonna know instantly what the problem with this is. This guitar, the one on this cover. Now look what it says underneath the picture. The nut on this one right there is different than the nut on that one. This guy came to their show. He put a little mark right on one of the strings. You couldn't really do that prior to this little invention. I'm gonna show you something really fascinating. Now, when I bought this originally, I had no idea. Okay, today's crazy trivia question: what do these two albums have to do with each other? We have Scorpions Blackout and Q5 Steal the Light. Now later in this video, I'm gonna do something I rarely do on this channel. I'm gonna show you something on the guitar. If you don't play the guitar, I'm certain you're gonna learn something interesting in this video. And even if you do play the guitar, I think 99% of the people that are guitar players out there are gonna learn something in this video that you've never heard before. Back in the 1980s, this was a go-to album for me. I loved everything about this record. It was just absolutely spectacular from front to back. Every song on here is great. The production's great. The execution, it's just all of it's amazing. And I came across this article, and here's what got me thinking about it. I saw this picture. Now this picture, you'll see that in this newspaper article, this is the picture of the cover of the album. Now look what it says underneath the picture. It says Rudy Schenker in Blackout. Now, a lot of people are going to know instantly what the problem with this is. When you first see this album cover, you think it's Rudolf Schenker, but it's not. This is actually a guy named Gottfried Hellwine. This is a self-portrait of the guy that painted this picture, the guy that made this picture. This is him. This is not Rudolf Schenker. But people mistake it, because look at this. Here's a picture of Rudolf Schenker on the cover of Worldwide Live. It'd be easy to mistake these two because they look so much alike, but I'm going to show you something. If you go to the Gottfried Hellwine website, you'll see it right there, and it says self-portraits, and if you scroll down on the self-portraits, there it is right there. So just want to clarify that for people that didn't know, this is not Rudolf Schenker. This is actually the artist Gottfried Hellwine that actually made this piece of art. And if you look on the back, his name's actually written right there. It says cover design and artwork by Gottfried Hellwine. So now getting back to this article, this is kind of the classic Scorpions lineup that had started in the album Love Drive. That's when Matthias Jabs, who we're going to talk about here in just a minute, that's when he joined the band. His first album was Love Drive, then Animal Magnetism, and then this one, Blackout. Now, we're not going to read this entire article. We're just going to read one paragraph, a paragraph that talks about the extensive touring they did for the albums Love Drive and Animal Magnetism. And what I'm going to tell you about today is something that happened during one of those tours. The Scorpions first cracked the American market more than 2 years ago with its first polygram album, Love Drive, followed by Animal Magnetism, which did even better. Meanwhile, the band was touring the country to promote the album, steadily expanding its audience here. These albums and tours paved the way for the Scorpions' latest Blackout, its first top 10 album in America. Okay. Now, with all this extensive touring in America, Matthias Jabs, the guitar player, the lead guitarist for the Scorpions, would be one of the pioneers, one of the first people to experience a new technology in guitar playing that would literally revolutionize guitar playing, kind of electric guitar playing, kind of forever. And I'm going to show you something. At the beginning of this album, the song Blackout is one of the most amazing rock and roll songs ever. And as a matter of fact, you know, with so many different albums starting off with these kind of dramatic, lead-ins, like at the beginning of Scream for Vengeance, they have the Hellion, and it's this really dramatic thing that leads into Electric Eye. This doesn't have that. This just launches. It rocks. But there's something that happens at the beginning of that song that ties back into all this stuff. And you're going to find this really interesting. I'm going to do something today I never do on this channel. I'm going to bust out a guitar and I'm going to play something for you. Okay, at the beginning of the song Blackout, you remember this is how it starts. And right there, Matthias Jabs comes in with this, which is the whammy bar. He does this dive, okay? Then it jumps into this. You recognize that part. And then Matthias comes in again with this. So right there at the beginning of the song, we do these two whammy bar dives, and this is important. So prior to about 1980, the whammy bar, you had to be really, really careful with it. Because if you used that thing and you pushed it too hard, your guitar would go out of tune. And guitar players understand this. And traditionally, a guitar like a Fender Stratocaster, if you push that thing too hard, that guitar would go out of tune almost instantly. And so I want to show you something. So here's a couple of pictures. If you look at these two pictures, these are a couple of Matthias Jabs Fenders. This one, this blonde Fender right there, and then you have this black one. Now, it's very hard to see, and I'll try to get some sort of a graphic to show you the difference, but the nut on this one right there is different than the nut on that one. And there's a very important reason for these differences. So while the Scorpions were touring, like it was talking about in that article, during the Animal Magnetism tour, because they were touring extensively in America, at one point they were in Los Angeles. And Matthias was hanging out with people, talking about the normal things a guitar player would. And one of the topics that came up was when you use the whammy bar, how your guitar would go out of tune. So you had to use your whammy bar so sparingly. Well, as he's having this conversation in Los Angeles, somebody says, hey, there's a guy living up in Seattle that has created this whole new system that actually helps you do dives on your whammy bar without the guitar going out of tune. Okay, so now remember, they're touring across the United States on a regular basis. So now they're down in Los Angeles, and as a lot of these tours go, they start going up the West Coast, and then they're going in San Francisco and on, and then they end up in Seattle. When these Scorpions get to Seattle to play the show, this guy came to their show, and he brought this prototype guitar and showed Matthias what he did and how he got this to work, and said, I can get your guitar so that it doesn't go out of tune. I can install this system. And Matthias left him this guitar, the one on this cover. That's the one. And he left that guitar with him and said, let's do it. Put this thing on here, set this system up. So this guy had worked as a jeweler, and he had come up with this really interesting idea. And I'm going to show you something else. So if you look at this guitar, what he had done, he put a little mark right on one of the strings. He did the whammy bar. Of course, when you do the whammy bar, it loosens the string, so the mark moves down like this as the string loosens. And then as he put the whammy bar back up, he noticed that the line would never quite go back to the exact same spot. So the guitar is going out of tune. So he realized, well, if that's happening, maybe the way to solve this problem is to lock this down so that the strings cannot move from that spot. So being a jeweler, he kind of worked on a few different things, and he came up with a way of locking the strings so that when the whammy bar went down, that couldn't move. And this was kind of the early version of the system that he showed to Matthias Jabs when he was on tour there in Seattle, and what led to that right there on this guitar. And it not just led to this on this guitar, it led to a whole new world of guitar playing that went all through the 80s, even to today. I mean, Eddie Van Halen became a big proponent of this, all these different guitar players, and it led to us kind of having this thing that we refer to as the dive bomb. As a matter of fact, when you listen to Kickstart My Heart, Motley Crue, that's what Mick Mars does. He grabs that whammy bar and he just dives that thing all the way down, just loosens up those strings, and then when he brings the whammy bar back, the guitar is still in tune. You couldn't really do that prior to this little invention. Now, what does it have to do with all this stuff right here? Again, Matthias got this set up while they were touring on Animal Magnetism, the tour that we're talking about in this article that I just read with you. So he had this system in place when they got to the point of recording Blackout, which allowed him to now experiment, where this album starts out with a sound with a little of these, more of these dives. They were able to be a little more adventurous with the dives because now they had the freedom of not having your guitar go out of tune the second you push that thing down. So Matthias, on that first song on this album, did a few of these dives because you didn't have to be so cautious. Okay, now, here's what's so fascinating about this. Everybody that's a guitar player will already know what that system is called. Everybody knows this. I think guitar players are born knowing the name of this system. It is called a Floyd Rose. Everybody knows this. And if you're not a guitar player, you may have even heard that term before, because it is like the standard. It was the original. Again, Matthias was one of the very first people to have this thing installed, and this is the guitar on this album cover. If you didn't know, on Worldwide Live, that's the one that had this early Floyd Rose, one of the initial ones, installed one of the original systems. Now here's the other thing that guitar players I've talked to don't usually know about, and it's this album right here. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to show you something really fascinating. This band called Q5, the album Steal the Light, look right there. Floyd Rose. The guitarist and primary songwriter for Q5 was a guy named Floyd Rose, and it's the same thing, the same guy that tremolo system is named after, because he's the one that developed it. So a lot of people I've talked to, the guitarists, don't even know that Floyd Rose is named after a person. Now, I know some of you do, but a lot of people have never even thought about it. They just know the name. And not only is it named after a person, the person was a guitar player in a band called Q5. And they put out this album. And by the way, if you've never heard this album and you like heavy metal, you must listen to this. Now, when I bought this originally, I had no idea. I just saw the album, and I used to be one of these crazy people that would just go into a record store and I just see records and I just buy them just because they looked interesting for some reason. I thought this was such a dumb cover. I thought it was so silly, but there was something about it. I thought, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. The album's a little bit muddy sounding, but man, it has got some rockers. Now, the thing that beyond this, they actually had a follow-up album, which I didn't think was even close to as good as this one, but I'm going to show you something else in this one. This is another album called by Q5, album called When the Mirror Cracks, and you flip it over right there. There again, Floyd Rose guitars. And that right there, my friends, that is Floyd Rose. If you own a guitar that has a Floyd Rose tremolo system, that's the guy. That's the guy that designed it, that developed it. And if you look on the inside of this record here, there he is again, Floyd Rose. This is the man that your tremolo system on your guitar is named after. He's the one that developed it. He was the former jeweler who came up with the idea of locking the nut so that the strings wouldn't slip, so that you could have a guitar that you dive bomb on. And one of the very first ones where it was installed for a professional guitar player was for Matthias Jabs on that guitar on this album. And he had it installed on the tour, as we talked about in this newspaper article, before they recorded this album, which enabled him, even in that first song, to be able to start experimenting more with dive bombs and make that part of the show, part of the music, without having to worry about his guitar going out of tune when he was playing live. Hey, thank you for taking the time to join me today. I hope that was fun. If you're not following the channel already, please follow the channel, like the video, share your comments below, and of course, if you're a guitar player, I bet you there are other guitar players that would find this really, really interesting. So please, we ask you, share this thing with other people. And if you knew about Q5, if you've heard this album before, let me know about that. Because this is one of those things very, very few people, I don't know that I've ever met anybody myself that owned this album that knew anything about them. So put that down in the comments if you knew about this and if you like this stuff. Also, we want to thank Digitech, speaking of guitars, for their ongoing support of the channel. If you're a guitar player, go to digitech.com, check out all the latest gear and technology that they have there. And of course, whenever you go to digitech.com, let them know that the people over at Audiomover sent you there. And with that, have yourself a fantastic day.